Okay, let's take a look at some of the types of items you should be creating in your Jama project for your semester project as you go through. So this is just going to be a very short show and tell demo. I want to go from the class. Here I am in the classroom. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom so I can use the link to go out to the Jama Connect tool, which you can use down there at the bottom. And you go into the tool. You'll need obviously to log on, as many of you have already done. When the tool comes up, it tends to come up showing you the project you were most recently in. In my case, that will be the demo project that I actually want to show you. But if you don't see that project, when you get to projects, up here and click on the link, typically chances are if you've been in the tool already, you're going to see your semester project as you go through. But you can up here under change project, switch to a different project under our class. In addition, the same place you would go to find your class project, there's this traffic intersection control project that you have the ability to read, but you won't be able to update as you go through. So that's the project I'm using here for our demo. It happens to match the traffic intersection control system that we're working on in this unit in some of our discussions going on. So it's fun to give you a show for it. So it has the same kind of sets, what I refer to as sets in the tool. Think of them as folders. But the things you can define. So I've already predefined a few requirements. My goal here was not to create an entire project. So you're not going to see the entire solution to the online discussion that we're doing, but just a few fragments here and there just to be able to show you what the tool can do. So typically in each of these sets, you can create things of this type. So typically the way I use the tool is I go in and just click on the folder itself. I'll let the tool open up a view for you. If it's just a view that looks fairly technical, I always come over here and click on the reading view. So all of my demo pages are going to tend to be that. You could look at it in other detail ways, but you'll actually see what's in the list. It's the same list as if I click on the plus sign and show you what's in. So in my stakeholders, I have 5 different stakeholders defined. And one of them, the driver, I expand out into even more types as they go. So I have a little hierarchy here. I can click these one at a time, but by clicking on the set at the top, I get the entire list over here in reading view. And what it shows me is the title that I can define as well as the description. So when, like I said in the demo video originally, that's what I expect you to enter as you're going through. Is because I want to be able to see what you've entered. Later you'll export this information and turn it in with your assignment, as well as potentially integrate some of it into your document. But I want to be able to look at it in this list as I come through. So it's very, very simple little tool, very little simple. So a driver, in this case, is an operator of a vehicle approaching or otherwise needing transit through the intersection. The train engineer is a type of driver, and it's an operator of a train approaching or otherwise seeking transit. So just very, very simple titles and names as you go through, and you can scroll through as you see that. When you're looking at a set like this, I'm going to leave them collapsed over here on the left because I tend to look at the full list. At any time, you can come over here and use the export tool to export it to Word or to a PDF. What I suggest you do on a regular basis is export them to a PDF and just go ahead and save that file in your saved directory. If you do that on a regular basis, even while you're doing your updates, you won't need to come back in and create new files all of a sudden when it's time to create your files to turn in with your assignment as you go through. So that's one thing I do as I'm doing the work going in. And it will name the file the same name as the folder that you're looking at. So if I look at each of these folders one at a time and hit export, I'll end up with those export files. Those are the files you can turn in with your assignments. So don't rename them. When I see a file called stakeholders.pdf, I know it's a Jama export of your stakeholders materials. Don't rename the files. Don't confuse me. I want everybody to be using the same file names out of their reports when you turn in your assignments. Just to continue the demo, that was stakeholders. Then I might go down here and look at the stakeholder requirements. Here it comes. And again, I'm in reading view, so I'll be able to see them. Okay, this is just the PDF of the attachment opening for me. Let me close that. So here are the requirements coming up, and I just want to show you a few things coming through because again, my requirements for my stakeholders tend to be for safety, equity, and speed, and I've got a variety just for the sake of some fun. I did build in some extras into that. I'm trying to get rid of this. Okay. Sorry, I got interrupted there by the PDF that I had downloaded automatically opening on my PC. Sorry about that. So I've got a series of stakeholder requirements that I've defined. So when you read that, I've said in the instructions, always say the system shall. So all the requirements have to be of this basic construct as you come through. Okay. So when you just have the requirement itself, you just type it as a sentence the way you'll see me doing here. The system shall provide safe passage through the intersection. The system shall provide fast passage through the intersection. Equity, though, here's an example where I went with the annotation that we've been talking about in the discussions, is you can take a requirement statement and go ahead and annotate it with more information as long as you're clear what is the requirement versus what is the annotation. So what I do is when I add more text to my requirement statement, I actually bold the actual requirement statement. So the actual requirement statement is the system shall provide equitable passage through the intersection. The rest of the text is just additional information I'm willing to give because I've learned it in the requirements process and I want people to be able to read it. But that extra text is not the requirement. It's just a clarification of the requirement as I go through. So again, all my requirements are stacked up in that list and I can create the extract for that. Then you've got the category known as business rules. These are things that are true and non-negotiable. So it's things that by definition your system must enforce. And I've put a few in here for our intersection system. Trains have the right of way over any other type of vehicle. That's not a requirement. That's just a business rule. You cannot violate that in your design. Each intersection instance is driven either as a right side of the road or a left side of the road. So if I'm here in the United States, I'm going to do a lot of right side of the road intersections. If I'm over in the UK, I'm going to do a lot of left side of the road intersections. So I've got to design my intersection so that control will work either place that I put it into. Safe mode. A safe mode is any transit in an unimpeded direction. So in a right side of the road country like the United States, turning right on red is considered a safe, unimpeded movement as we go through. Another business definition is that only pedestrian and train lanes are permitted to support two-way traffic. All other lanes in our system only have to support one-way traffic. Those are rules. They cannot be violated, and that's the way we would define them. Then I get into the business requirements. What's the difference between a rule and a requirement? A requirement can be negotiated. A requirement can be prioritized. A requirement can be omitted. I can't violate the rules. I'm going to work with project management to decide which requirements I can influence. So for your system, you should be writing a mission statement. Business requirements really are the implied requirements of the mission statement. There's no mission statement in this tool. You'll just write it in your report. But think of it that way. So in this case, in this way, I've said the system shall prioritize the movement of people over vehicles. That I want to optimize traffic flow of people, not just vehicles, as I go through. And then the system shall be configurable to support any intersection layout. We've discussed that a lot in the discussions, is the fact that we're not designing one particular intersection to control. We're designing a control system that can run on any intersection, no matter how many streets come together, whether those streets are sidewalks or drivable vehicles or light rail or trains, whatever they are, 5, 6, 7 intersecting streets. We've got to be able to support that intersection, not any particular one. So this configuration and the functions we design to configure the system when we install it are going to be a critical component of what's going on here. And again, notice how I bold the statement when I've written more than just the requirement statement. I don't bother to bold it if the only thing I've written is the requirement statement. I might have some functional requirements that come from that. Now, functional requirements I tend to group into components. So they tend to get the high order number. When I look at it here on the left, you'll see them. So that's non-functional requirements. Functional requirements are, in my case, configuration, sensing, clearance, emergency. So I define categories of requirements, and then I do my requirements within that. So within my configuration, I've got lane sets. What does it mean for a set of lanes to be part of the intersection? I might go through. I've got, complicated one, logical adjacency. The lanes in the lane set shall demonstrate a logical order, generally from left to right. The U-turn left, the left turn straight ahead, right turn, and U-turn right. And adjacent lanes can combine several of these. You can have a left turn straight ahead lane, things of that nature. That comes down to, again, what do I need to know to properly configure my intersection? I've got a sensing functional requirement, a group of sensing requirements. The system shall detect vehicles that arrive at the intersection. The system shall infer directional intent based on the lane in which a vehicle arrives. And the system shall continuously determine the queue length of each arriving lane. So again, you've got more and more requirements as you go down. Here's another example of one where I've bolded the requirement, because I've got something that's non-requirement that follows it. So the system shall track the wait time of every vehicle in any arriving lane. The desired granularity is in seconds. Okay, so you've got all the functional requirements that come in here, and then you get down to a category of non-functional requirements. These tend to be the things the system must be, not necessarily the things the system must do. So the system shall be easy to use for all drivers is a non-functional requirement. We'll spend a lot of this semester learning about non-functional requirements. So you may or may not have one or two of these during your conceptualization stage. That's okay. We'll get to that later in the semester as we continue this process. Let me close up some of these. I don't have any system requirements defined yet. I'm trying to demo something I would have during conceptualization. So I'm not doing any system requirements, though they will come later. Likewise, you don't have to have verification and validation requirements right now. We will have a specific unit in Unit 8 where we talk about verification and validation, but I decided just to plug in a couple for demonstration purposes. So here's a verification one, that when I'm testing to make sure I built the system correctly, what would I want to test? That's verification. So every arriving lane targets at least one departure lane for every allowed type of arriving vehicle. So again, making sure that once you tell me the configuration of your intersection through the functions I provide to do configuration, I'll be able to have tools to test to make sure the configuration is valid. Okay. Validation says, did I build the right system? Not did I build it right, that's verification, but did I build the right system? So what would I want to test to validate that the system is in fact the correct one? What could I test in my acceptance test cases, if you will? One is rail exclusivity. A train arrival immediately denies clearance to all cross-traffic lanes. Okay. Trains are going to arrive whether we want them to or not, so we have to go through. The system shall detect when no movement occurs once clearance is given on an arrival lane. So if someone breaks down in an arrival lane and isn't moving, my control system should know that that's happening. I want to make sure that that's happening. So again, these will come up in Unit 8 on writing verification and validation requirements, and we'll fill these in as we go. But if during conceptualization you have a few of these things in mind, feel free to include them. This train arrival immediately denies clearance to all traffic lanes. If I were to go back to my business rules, what was my functional requirements? I'm trying to see where I defined that. I guess I did it under stakeholders. Looking back at what I have here. You can create cross-referencing among these things, and you should be doing that as you go through. Looking at stakeholder requirements for beyond urgency but immediacy. There was an immediacy requirement under here under stakeholders. Take a look at it. The system shall provide immediate clearance through the intersection upon vehicle arrival. So if a train arrives on a train track, I want to be able to take that to its limit as we go through. So again, if I look at stakeholder requirements in my map and I come down to that particular requirement, if I look at how I've cross-referenced that, show the related items to that, you'll see that this is associated with the train engineer as I go through. So if I come down here to the right-of-way, to the actual validation rule for that, okay, and I've got rail exclusivity, I could edit this. Okay, to say I want to cross-reference that. That's what this little icon is over here, is relationships. I don't have any yet, so here I am saying I want to do that. Okay, but I can connect this back to the visual layout of what I had. So if I want to relate this to an item, rail exclusivity as my test, I might come back here to the immediacy requirement and relate that as I go through. Okay, so again, I've created that relationship between two things that are going on. So if I come back here to this requirement, and look at its relationships, I'll now see that not only is this immediacy is attached to the validation of rail exclusivity. So that's a downward relationship that I've got going on in my relationship. So you can be creating relationships among these various things as we go. Again, how much of this you use is going to be up to you, but you do have to use it on your tool to get some idea of how some of these requirements, definition, and modeling tools work. You'll be creating the export files for each of these as you go through. So be prepared to do that. I want to see the export file for each. So as you're coming through conceptualization, you might only have export file for a few of these as you're using it. By the end of the project, the end of the semester, you'll be giving me an export file for all of these that you'll submit. So you'll be submitting 10 files to your final assignment. One of them will be your main report in every deliverable, but also you'll be delivering these export files as they go. So I have an easy way in the web courses grading tool to see that. I could come into the tool and look at them here, but that would take me hours to grade every project. So the reason I'm asking you to create these exports is I'm going to need them associated with your submission, so I have them available to me right in front of my browser as I'm looking at for your report at the end of the semester. So this has been a very, very brief little demo of the tool. You're welcome to come into this. You have read access to this project. Come in and take a look at it if you want. Try things out in your practice project, and then post things in the online discussion we have available for discussing how to use the tool. Thanks.